The kitchen clock read 2:47 a.m. when I heard Pamela's heels clicking across our hardwood floor. I sat at the table, nursing my third cup of coffee, staring at the stack of evidence I'd been collecting for weeks. Bank statements, phone records, screenshots of text messages that would make a sailor blush. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She walked in like she owned the world, her blouse wrinkled, lipstick smeared, reeking of cologne that definitely wasn't mine. The smirk on her face could have powered our house for a week. "Jack," she said, tossing her purse on the counter with theatrical flair. "We need to talk." I looked up from my coffee, keeping my voice level. "Do we now?" She smoothed down her skirt and crossed her arms, striking a pose like she was about to deliver the performance of her life. "I've been doing some thinking. About us, about what I want." "And what's that, Pam?" The smirk widened. "Freedom. Real freedom. From now on, I decide when and with whom I spend my time. You can either accept it, or—" She shrugged. "Well, you know where the door is." I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I reached for the manila folder beside my coffee cup and opened it slowly, deliberately. "Funny you should mention decisions, Pam. I've been making some of my own." Her confidence wavered for just a second when she saw the photos spilling out. Pictures of her and Eric Sloan, her co-worker, in compromising positions at the Riverside Motel. Pictures of her with two other men I didn't even recognize. Text message screenshots where she called me a pathetic loser and discussed how to milk the divorce for everything. "Where did you get these?" Her voice cracked slightly. "Amazing what you can find when you actually look, isn't it?" I stood up, spreading the evidence across the table like a poker hand. "You'll find my iPhone location for starters. Did you know you spent 17 hours at Eric's apartment last month, while telling me you were at your sister's?" Her face went pale. "You've been spying on me?" "Spying?" I chuckled. "Pam, you left your laptop open. Your phone syncs to our shared iCloud. And Ray down at the garage? His nephew works security at the Riverside. Small world, isn't it?" She grabbed for the photos, but I was faster. "These are private." "We're private. Now they're evidence." I picked up a particularly damning screenshot. This one's my favorite, where you tell Eric how you're going to play the victim and take me for half of everything, including the garage I built from nothing. The smirk was completely gone now, replaced by something between panic and rage. "You can't use those in court." "Can't I?" I pulled out another document. "Funny thing about divorce law in this state, Pam. Adultery affects asset division, and when there's evidence of planning to defraud a spouse." I whistled low. "Well, let's just say your settlement just got a lot smaller." She lunged for the papers again, but I'd already made copies. Multiple copies. "You bastard! You can't do this to me." "Actually, I can. And I am." I walked to the kitchen window and pointed to the driveway. "Your suitcases are in your car. I changed the locks an hour ago. The credit cards are canceled. Your name's off the bank accounts as of yesterday." "You can't throw me out. This is my house, too." I turned back to her, and for the first time in months, I felt genuinely calm. "Was your house. Funny thing about that garage you wanted to steal from me? Turns out it's been making enough money to buy out your half of this place. Legally. With documentation. Filed yesterday." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. This wasn't the broken, begging husband she'd expected. This was someone who'd been 3 steps ahead the entire time. "From now on," I said, echoing her earlier words, "I decide what happens in my house, with my money, and to my life. You can either accept it, or—" I gestured toward the door. "Well, you know where it is." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Then she exploded. "You think you're so smart. You think you've won." She was screaming now, her carefully composed mask completely shattered. I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone what a controlling freak you are. You'll what? I interrupted. Tell them how you cheated with at least 3 different men? How you planned to commit fraud? How you called your husband pathetic while spending his money on hotel rooms with other guys? I shook my head. Go ahead, Pam. Tell everyone. I've got the receipts. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door, then spun back around. This isn't over, Jack. Not by a long shot. Actually, I said, settling back into my chair, it is. It's been over for months. I just finally decided to do something about it. The door slammed so hard it rattled the windows. Through the kitchen blinds, I watched her tear out of the driveway, tires squealing on the asphalt. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and smiled. For the first time in months, the house felt like home again. But I was naive to think it would end there. Pamela had never been one to go quietly, and she'd just declared war on the wrong man. The next morning, I drove to Forrester's Classic Auto Restoration, the garage I'd built from a 2-bay nothing into the most respected restoration shop in 3 counties. Ray Kowalski, my business partner, and the closest thing I had to a best friend, was already elbow-deep in a '67 Mustang engine when I walked in. You look like hell, he said without looking up. But you also look, I don't know, lighter somehow. Kicked Pam out last night. Ray's wrench stopped moving. He straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. About damn time. What finally did it? I filled him in on the confrontation, showing him copies of the evidence. Ray whistled low when he saw the photos. Jesus, Jack. Right there in broad daylight at the riverside? She wasn't even trying to hide it. Gets better. I pulled out my phone and showed him the text messages. Read this one. Ray squinted at the screen. Jack's so pathetic he'll never figure it out. Eric says we can probably get the garage appraised low and buy it cheap after the divorce. What the hell? That's not even the worst one. I scrolled down. He actually thinks I'm working late. God, men are stupid. Can't wait to take him for everything and start fresh with someone who isn't a boring mechanic. Ray's face darkened. That bitch. After everything you've done for her? You put her through college. Community college business degree. 2 years, 30 grand. So she could get that HR job at TechFlow Solutions and meet winners like Eric Sloan. Eric Sloan. Ray frowned. Why does that name sound familiar? Remember that guy who came by last month? Slick suit, fancy car, asking about buying the property for some tech expansion? The one who acted like we were idiots? That Eric Sloan? The very same. Turns out he and Pam have been planning this for months. Seduce the wife, tank the marriage, buy the property cheap when the desperate husband needs quick cash for the divorce. Ray threw his rag down hard enough to make it bounce. Son of a bitch! They were trying to steal your life's work. Were being the operative phrase. I leaned against the Mustang's fender. But here's what I need to know. You said your nephew works security at the Riverside? Tommy, yeah. Why? How much security footage do you think they keep? Ray's grin was predatory. Let me make a phone call. While Ray worked his family connections, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the local watering hole where half the town's business got discussed over beer and whiskey. Barb McKenna had been tending bar there for 15 years, and she knew everyone's secrets. Jack Forrester, she called out as I walked in. Little early for you, isn't it? Just coffee, Barb, and maybe some conversation. She poured me a mug and leaned across the bar. Heard through the grapevine that Pam's been making some new friends lately. What kind of friends? The kind that buy her drinks when her husband thinks she's at book club. Barb's expression was sympathetic but knowing. Honey, half the town's been talking about it. We all figured you knew, and we're just handling it quietly. What exactly has the town been saying? Barb glanced around the nearly empty bar, then leaned closer. She's been coming in here with that Eric character from TechFlow. Real piece of work, that one. Talks loud, tips small, treats the waitresses like servants. They sit in that back booth and plan things. What kind of things? The kind of things that would make a decent man's blood boil. She straightened up as another customer walked in, but kept talking quietly. There's more, Jack. Other men. That Todd guy from her office, some salesman from Portland. She's been busy. My phone buzzed. Text from Ray. Tommy says they keep footage for 90 days, and he's got access. Meet me at the shop. I left a 10 on the bar and headed back to the garage. Ray was waiting with his nephew Tommy, a skinny kid in his 20s with the kind of nervous energy that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Uncle Ray says you need some help with a cheating wife situation, Tommy said, glancing around like he expected police to burst in. Nothing illegal, I assured him. Just need to know what's on those security cameras from the past month. Man, I could lose my job. Ray put a hand on his nephew's shoulder. Tommy, Jack here gave you work when you needed it. Fixed your car for parts cost when you were broke, remember? Tommy nodded reluctantly. Yeah, okay. But I can't give you the footage directly. Best I can do is tell you what I saw. That's enough. For the next hour, Tommy painted a picture that was worse than I'd imagined. Pam hadn't just been cheating. She'd been running a small-scale operation. Different men, different nights, all while building a case for why I was a neglectful husband who deserved to lose everything. The thing is, Tommy said, they weren't just, they were planning. I could see them through the window, pointing at papers, making phone calls, real organized stuff. After Tommy left, Ray and I sat in the garage office, processing what we'd learned. It's worse than we thought, Ray said. This wasn't just an affair, it was a conspiracy. And it's not over. I pulled out my phone and showed him a text I'd received an hour ago. From Eric Sloan himself. Ray read it aloud. Your wife deserves better than a grease monkey who can't satisfy her. Back off, or you'll regret it. What a piece of work. He has no idea what he's dealing with, I said. Neither of them do. My phone rang. Pam's number. Answer it, Ray suggested, but put it on speaker. I hit accept. What do you want, Pam? I want to come home. Her voice was different now, smaller. Jack, I made a mistake. We can work this out. Can we now? I'm staying at Eric's, but it's not what I thought it would be. He's not the man I thought he was. Ray raised an eyebrow. I mouthed, trouble in paradise, and continued the conversation. What kind of man did you think he was, Pam? Someone who cared about me, but he just wanted to use me, to get to you, to get the garage. Imagine that. Jack, please. I know I hurt you, but we had 15 years together. That has to count for something. It did count for something, right up until you decided to throw it away for a guy in a shiny suit who saw you as a means to an end. I'll make it up to you. I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. I looked at Ray, who was shaking his head vigorously. Here's what it would take, Pam. You'd have to undo every lie, every betrayal, every night you spent in another man's bed while I was home thinking you were working late. Can you do that? Silence. That's what I thought, I said. Goodbye, Pam. Wait. Jack, don't hang up. I ended the call and turned off the phone. Think she's really done with Eric? Ray asked. Doesn't matter, she made her choice. Now she gets to live with the consequences. But even as I said it, I knew this was far from over. Pam had never been good at accepting consequences, and Eric Sloan struck me as the type who didn't take rejection well. I was about to find out just how right I was. 2 days later, I was replacing the transmission on a '72 Chevelle when Eric Sloan's silver BMW pulled into the garage lot. I watched through the bay door as he sat in the car for a full minute, probably working up his courage. Ray noticed him too. Want me to handle this? No, I've got it. Eric finally got out of the car, straightening his tie and smoothing his hair like he was heading into a board meeting instead of a garage that smelled like motor oil and honest work. He was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-30s, soft around the middle, expensive suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. "Jack Forrester?" He walked into the bay like he owned the place. "That's me." I didn't stop working on the transmission. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I finally looked up, making sure my hands were good and greasy before I wiped them on a rag. "About what?" "About Pamela. About this situation." "What situation is that, Eric?" I stepped closer, and he instinctively took a step back. "The situation where you've been sleeping with my wife? Or the situation where you two plan to defraud me out of my business?" His face went red. "I don't know what you think you know, but I know exactly what I know." I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Pam's text messages. "Right there. Eric says we can get the garage appraised low and buy it cheap. Want to explain that?" He glanced at the phone, then back at my face. "That's taken out of context." "Is it? How about this one?" I scrolled to another message. "Jack's so stupid. He'll never see it coming. Eric's got the whole thing planned out." "Look, whatever happened between Pam and me, it's over. She came crawling back to me, but I told her I wasn't interested in damaged goods." The wrench in my hand felt heavier suddenly. "Damaged goods? She's used up, Forrester. You can have her back. I'm done with her." That's when I understood what Pam had meant about Eric not being the man she thought he was. He wasn't just a cheater and a schemer. He was a coward who threw people away when they stopped being useful. "Generous of you," I said, "but I'm not interested in taking back damaged goods either." His confidence returned slightly. "Smart man. Now, about that property offer I made last month. What about it?" "I'm prepared to increase it, significantly. Cash deal, quick closing. You could be out from under all this mess and starting fresh somewhere else." I almost admired his audacity. Almost. "Let me get this straight. You sleep with my wife, plan to steal my business, and now you want to buy me out?" "Business is business, Forrester. Personal feelings don't have to enter into it." "You're right. Business is business." I set down the wrench and walked toward him. "And my business is doing just fine without your help." He held his ground, but barely. "You're making a mistake. This town's changing. Places like this garage, they're dinosaurs. You could take my money and buy something nice in Florida. Live easy. Or I could stay right here and watch you explain to your boss why you've been using company resources to run a real estate scam." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "TechFlow Solutions. Public company, right? I bet they have policies about employees engaging in fraud. Probably have policies about sexual harassment, too." "I never harassed anyone." "No? What do you call seducing an employee's wife to steal her husband's property? Because I've got a lawyer who thinks that might constitute harassment of me and conspiracy to commit fraud." Eric's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You can't prove any of that." "Can I?" I pulled out my phone again. Amazing what people will admit in text messages when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Ray appeared beside me, wiping his hands on a rag. "Problem here, Jack?" "No problem. Mr. Sloan was just leaving." Eric looked between us, clearly calculating his odds in a physical confrontation. Smart Money said he'd never been in a real fight in his life. "This isn't over," he said, backing toward his car. "Actually, it is. And Eric?" I waited until he turned back. "If you come around here again, or if you contact my wife, or if you so much as drive past my house, I'll make sure everyone at TechFlow gets copies of these text messages, along with the security footage from the Riverside Motel." He got in his BMW and peeled out of the lot fast enough to leave rubber on the asphalt. "Think that'll be the end of it?" Ray asked. "Not a chance. Guys like that don't give up easy. They just get sneakier." I was right. That afternoon, I got a call from my neighbor, Mrs. Dugan. She was 83, sharp as a tack, and had appointed herself the neighborhood's unofficial security system. "Jack, dear, There's been a man sitting in a car outside your house for the past hour. Silver BMW. He keeps taking pictures. I'll be right there. When I got home, Eric's car was gone, but Mrs. Dugan was waiting on her porch with a cup of tea and a satisfied expression. I got his license plate number, she said, and I might have accidentally taken a few pictures of him taking pictures, with the time stamp and everything. Mrs. Dugan, you're a treasure. I also might have called my grandson, the one who's a police officer, told him we had a suspicious person casing the neighborhood. And? He ran the plates. Eric Sloan, 1247 Riverside Drive, apartment 3B. 2 unpaid parking tickets and a complaint filed against him last year for stalking an ex-girlfriend. I stared at her. How did you get all that information? She smiled sweetly. Dear, I've lived in this town for 60 years. I know people. That evening, Pam called again. This time she sounded desperate. Jack, Eric's scaring me. He's been calling and texting nonstop. He says if I don't help him get the garage, he'll make sure everyone knows about everything. About what, Pam? The other men. The things we did. He recorded some of our conversations. He's threatening to send them to my family, to my work. Sounds like you picked a real winner. This isn't a joke. He's dangerous, Jack. I think he might hurt me. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What do you want me to do about it? Talk to him. Make him stop. I did talk to him. He didn't seem interested in listening. Please, Jack, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm scared. I thought about it. Pam had made her bed, but Eric Sloan was becoming everyone's problem. Where are you staying? A motel on Route 9, the Pine View. Stay there, don't go anywhere alone. And Pam? Yeah? This doesn't change anything between us. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because Eric Sloan needs to learn that actions have consequences. After I hung up, I called Ray. How do you feel about taking a little drive tonight? Depends. Are we going to do anything that'll get us arrested? Nothing illegal. But Eric Sloan's about to learn what happens when you threaten people in a small town. I'll pick you up in an hour. As I waited for Ray, I thought about how quickly everything had changed. 3 days ago, I'd been a betrayed husband planning a quiet divorce. Now I was planning something that felt a lot like war. But Eric had made it personal when he threatened Pam, not out of love for her, but to hurt me. And in small towns, word travels fast. By tomorrow, everyone would know that Eric Sloan was the kind of man who used women and threw them away when they stopped being useful. In a place like this, that kind of reputation could destroy a person. I was counting on it. Ray picked me up in his pickup truck at 9 p.m. sharp. We drove to Eric's apartment complex in silence, both of us thinking through what we were about to do. You sure about this? Ray asked as we pulled into the parking lot. I'm sure he needs to understand that his actions have consequences. Eric's BMW was parked in front of Building 3. The lights were on in apartment 3B, and we could see him pacing back and forth past the window, phone pressed to his ear. Probably calling Pam, I said. Mrs. Dugan mentioned he'd been making calls all afternoon. We sat in the truck for 10 minutes, watching. Eric appeared at the window several times, always agitated, always gesturing wildly at whoever was on the other end of the phone. There, Ray pointed. He's leaving. Eric came out of his apartment wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking nothing like the slick businessman from earlier. He got in his BMW and drove off toward Route 9, toward the Pineview Motel where Pam was staying. Follow him? Ray asked. No, let's pay a visit to his neighbors. We walked to apartment 3A and knocked. An elderly woman answered, looking suspicious until she saw our faces. Mrs. Patterson? I'd done some work on her car the previous year. It's Jack Forrester from the garage. Her expression brightened. Jack, what brings you by so late? I hate to bother you, but I wanted to ask about your neighbor, Eric Sloan. Her face darkened immediately. That man is a menace. Loud music, loud phone calls, women coming and going at all hours. I've complained to the landlord 3 times. Has he been bothering you directly? Just this afternoon, he was screaming into his phone about someone named Pam, using language that would make a sailor blush. Then he started throwing things. I heard glass breaking. Ray and I exchanged glances. Mrs. Patterson, would you be willing to call the landlord again? Maybe mention that you're concerned about the property damage? I already did. Mr. Chen said if there's one more complaint, he's out. We thanked Mrs. Patterson and walked back to the truck. As we were getting in, my phone buzzed with a text from Pam. He's here, at the motel. He's banging on my door. Change of plans, I told Ray. Pineview Motel. We made it there in 12 minutes. Eric's BMW was parked sideways across 2 spaces, and we could hear shouting from the second floor. Pam, open this door. We need to talk. She doesn't want to talk to you, I called up from the parking lot. Eric appeared at the railing, his face twisted with rage. This is none of your business, Forrester. Actually, it became my business when you decided to involve my wife in your schemes. Your wife came to me. She wanted out of your pathetic life. And now she wants out of yours. Funny how that works. Eric started down the stairs, moving fast and angry. Ray stepped up beside me, and Eric slowed down considerably when he saw we weren't alone. You think you're tough because you brought backup? Eric said, but he kept his distance. I think I'm smart because I brought a witness, I replied, in case you do something stupid. The only stupid thing I did was waste time on your used-up wife. That's when Pam's door opened. She appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her work clothes from 2 days ago, looking like she hadn't slept. Just leave me alone, Eric. It's over. It's over when I say it's over. He started back up the stairs. You owe me, Pam. I put time and money into this plan, and I'm not walking away empty-handed. What plan? I called up. The one where you seduce married women to steal their husband's property? Eric spun around. Shut up, Forrester. Or the one where you record private conversations to blackmail people? I said shut up. Because if that's your business model, I've got some bad news. Word travels fast in small towns. Eric's face went pale. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the conversation I had with your boss this afternoon. Jim Morrison, right? CEO of TechFlow Solutions? That was a lie, but Eric didn't know that. You called my boss? Didn't have to. Turns out his daughter goes to school with my nephew. Small world. When he heard one of his employees was running real estate scams and harassing local business owners, Eric was shaking now. You're lying. Am I? Check your email when you get home. I bet there's a message waiting for you. There wasn't, but Eric didn't know that either. Ray stepped forward. Maybe you should head home, Mr. Sloan. Check that email. Handle your business. Eric looked between us, then up at Pam, then back at us. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured tire. This isn't over, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yeah, it is, I replied. And Eric? If you come near Pam again, or if you contact anyone in my family, I won't just call your boss. I'll call the police. Harassment is a crime in this state. He got in his BMW and drove off, tires squealing on the asphalt. Pam came down the stairs slowly. Is it true? About his boss? Not yet, I said. But it could be. Jack, don't. I held up a hand. Just don't. This doesn't change anything between us, Pam. I helped you because no one deserves to be threatened and harassed, but we're still getting divorced, and you're still not welcome in my house. She nodded, tears starting to flow. I know, I'm sorry. For all of it. Sorry doesn't fix 15 years of lies. Ray and I got back in the truck and drove home in silence. As we pulled into my driveway, he finally spoke. Think that's the end of it? With Eric? Maybe. He's a coward, and cowards don't fight when they think they might lose. And with Pam? I looked at my house, dark and quiet and peaceful. Pam's not my problem anymore. But even as I said it, I knew there were still loose ends to tie up. Eric might be scared off for now, but men like him didn't give up easily. They just got more careful about their revenge. And Pam was still out there, still capable of causing trouble. She knew too much about my business, my finances, my life. In the wrong hands, that information could still hurt me. I needed to make sure that didn't happen. The next morning, I had breakfast at Murphy's Tavern and made sure to sit at the counter where everyone could hear me talking to Barb. "Heard there was some excitement at the Pineview last night," she said, pouring my coffee. "Eric Sloan was harassing my ex-wife. Had to explain to him that we don't tolerate that kind of behavior around here." "Eric Sloan," she frowned. "Isn't he that guy from TechFlow who's been coming in here acting like he owns the place?" "That's him. Turns out he's been running some kind of real estate scam, using women to get information about properties he wants to buy cheap." The three other customers at the counter all turned to listen. In a town this size, that meant the story would be all over by lunchtime. "What kind of scam?" asked Pete Kowalski, Ray's older brother. "Seduce married women, break up their marriages, then swoop in and buy the husband's property when he's desperate for quick cash in the divorce?" "Son of a bitch," muttered Frank Delacroix, who owned the hardware store. "That's what he was asking about when he came in last month. Wanted to know which businesses might be struggling, which owners might be looking to sell." "He asked me the same thing," said Tommy Brennan, the mailman. "Said he was looking for investment opportunities, but wanted to keep it quiet." By the time I finished my eggs and toast, Eric Sloan's reputation in town was thoroughly destroyed. Word would spread to every business, every family, every social circle. In a place like this, that kind of reputation was a death sentence. I paid my check and headed to the garage, feeling satisfied. Eric might try to cause more trouble, but he'd have to do it from outside the community that had just rejected him completely. As for Pam, well, she'd made her choice. Now she could live with the consequences. But I wasn't done with either of them yet, not by a long shot. 3 weeks later, I was finishing up a brake job on a '78 Firebird when Mrs. Dugan appeared in the garage doorway, holding a manila envelope and wearing the satisfied expression of someone with juicy gossip to share. "Jack, dear, I have something you might find interesting." "What's that, Mrs. Dugan?" She handed me the envelope. Inside were photographs, clear, well-lit shots of Eric Sloan breaking into my house. Or trying to, anyway. The security system I'd installed after kicking Pam out had captured everything. "Motion sensors triggered at 3:17 a.m. last Tuesday," she explained. "Caught him trying to jimmy the back door. When that didn't work, he tried the basement window. Spent 45 minutes skulking around your property." Ray looked over my shoulder at the photos. Stupid bastard. What was he looking for? Probably the evidence I showed him. Bank records, text messages, security footage, anything that could implicate him in the conspiracy. "Too bad for him you keep all that stuff in a safety deposit box," Ray said with a grin. Mrs. Dugan's eyes lit up. "Oh, but that's not the best part. Show him the last photo, Jack." I flipped to the final picture and burst out laughing. Eric, caught in the act of running away, had tripped over my garden hose and fallen face first into the rose bushes. The photo showed him tangled in thorns, his expensive jacket torn, his face scratched and bleeding. "I may have accidentally left the sprinkler system on a timer that night," Mrs. Dugan said innocently. "Such a shame when people slip on wet grass." "Mrs. Dugan, you're a devious woman." "I prefer thorough, dear. Now what are you going to do about this?" I thought about it. Eric had just committed breaking and entering, trespassing, and attempted burglary. I had photographic evidence, timestamps, and a witness. I could have him arrested, charged, and probably sent to prison, but that seemed too easy, too clean. "Ray, how's your nephew Tommy doing at the motel?" "Good. Why? Think he'd be interested in earning some extra money for a little surveillance work?" Ray's grin widened. "I think he'd be very interested." That afternoon, I drove to TechFlow Solutions and asked to speak with Jim Morrison, the CEO. It took some persistence, but eventually his secretary agreed to give me 5 minutes. Morrison was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else than in a meeting with a mechanic in work clothes. "Mr. Forrester, I'm very busy. What can I do for you? I wanted to discuss one of your employees, Eric Sloan." His expression tightened slightly. "What about him?" "He's been harassing my family, stalking my ex-wife. Last week, he broke into my house." I showed him the photographs. Morrison studied them carefully, his face growing darker with each image. "These are quite serious allegations." "They're not allegations. They're documented facts. Time-stamped photographs, witness statements, police reports." "Police reports?" I pulled out another document. I'd filed a report that morning, though I hadn't pressed charges yet. Breaking and entering, criminal trespassing, attempted burglary. In this state, that's a felony. Morrison set down the photos and leaned back in his chair. "What do you want, Mr. Forrester?" "I want Eric Sloan to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to face the full legal and professional ramifications of his choices." "And if he were no longer employed here?" "That would be a start, but it wouldn't address the criminal charges." Morrison nodded slowly. "I see. Well, Mr. Forrester, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. TechFlow Solutions has a zero-tolerance policy for employees who engage in criminal behavior." "I'm glad to hear that. Eric Sloan will be terminated immediately, and I'll be sure to mention these incidents in any reference checks from future employers." I stood up and shook his hand. "Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison." As I walked out of the office, I passed Eric's cubicle. He was on the phone, probably harassing Pam again, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. That evening, Ray and I sat in Murphy's Tavern, celebrating a job well done. Barb kept our glasses full and our conversation private, though half the town had already heard about Eric's attempted break-in. "So what's next?" Ray asked. "Think he'll leave town?" "Probably. Men like Eric don't stick around when their schemes fall apart. They find new towns, new victims, new opportunities. And Pam?" I shrugged. "Pam's not my problem anymore. She made her choices, and now she gets to live with them." But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't quite true. Pam was still out there, still capable of causing trouble. She knew too much about my business, my finances, my personal life. In the right circumstances, that information could still hurt me. My phone buzzed with a text message. From Pam. "Eric got fired. He's blaming me. Says it's my fault for talking to you. He's threatening to hurt me if I don't help him get revenge on you." I showed the message to Ray. "Looks like Eric's not going quietly after all." "What do you want to do?" I thought about it. Eric had already tried breaking and entering. If he was desperate enough, there was no telling what he might do next. And if he hurt Pam in the process, well, I might not love her anymore, but I didn't want her blood on my hands. "Time to end this once and for all," I said. I typed back. "Where are you?" "Pineview Motel, room 237. He's been calling all day, getting more and more angry." "Stay put, lock the door, don't let anyone in." "Jack, I'm scared." "You should be, but not of me." I turned to Ray. "Feel like taking another drive?" "Always. But this time, we're calling the cops first, right? This time, we're finishing what Eric started." As we walked out of Murphy's, I felt a strange sense of completion. For 3 weeks, I'd been reacting to other people's moves, cleaning up other people's messes, dealing with other people's consequences. Tonight, I was going to take control of the situation once and for all. Eric Sloan had made the mistake of thinking he could intimidate me, steal from me, and threaten people I cared about without facing any real consequences. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. We found Eric's BMW parked outside the Pineview Motel at 10:30 p.m. Through the second-floor window of room 237, we could see shadows moving, hear raised voices. Eric was already inside, and from the sound of it, the conversation wasn't going well. "Should we call the cops now?" Ray asked. "Not yet. Let's see what we're dealing with first." We climbed the external stairs quietly. The door to room 237 was slightly ajar, and we could hear every word. "Your fault I lost my job," Eric was shouting. "If you hadn't run crying to your pathetic ex-husband, none of this would have happened." "I didn't ask him to help me." Pam's voice was shaky, scared. "I just wanted you to leave me alone." "Well, now we're both screwed thanks to you. I've got bills to pay, a reputation to rebuild, and it's all because you couldn't keep your mouth shut." "Eric, please, just leave. We can both start over somewhere else." "Start over?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You think I'm just going to walk away from 15 years of planning? From the biggest score of my life? What are you talking about?" "Your husband's garage, you stupid bitch. That property is worth $2 million to the right buyer. TechFlow was going to pay me a finder's fee worth more than I make in 5 years. Ray and I exchanged glances. So it had been bigger than just stealing my business. Eric had been working on commission. "But that's over now," Pam said. "Jack will never sell to you. He will if he doesn't have a choice." The tone in Eric's voice made my blood run cold. Ray must have heard it too, because he was already pulling out his phone to call 911. "What do you mean?" Pam asked. "I mean accidents happen, fires start, insurance companies pay out, and grieving widows sometimes make poor financial decisions." That's when I kicked in the door. Eric spun around, his face a mask of rage and desperation. Pam was backed against the far wall, her face pale with terror. "Evening, Eric," I said, stepping into the room with Ray right behind me. "Having a nice conversation?" "Get out! This is private property." "Actually, it's a motel room, which makes it semi-public, and making terrorist threats makes it my business." "I wasn't making threats." "No? Because it sounded like you were planning to burn down my garage and kill me for the insurance money." Eric's eyes darted between me, Ray, and the door. "You can't prove anything." "Can't I?" Ray held up his phone. "Amazing what these things can record when you hit the right button." The color drained from Eric's face. "You were recording me?" "Just the part where you confessed to conspiracy, arson, and murder. You know, the felonies." Eric lunged for the door, but Ray was ready for him. At 55, Ray was still strong enough to wrestle transmissions out of cars. Handling one panicked office worker wasn't much of a challenge. "Let me go! You can't do this!" "Actually, we can," I said, pulling out my own phone. "Citizen's arrest. We just witnessed you threaten to commit arson and murder. That's enough to hold you until the police get here." As if on cue, we heard sirens in the distance. "You called the cops?" Pam looked surprised. "About 5 minutes ago," Ray said, still holding Eric in a headlock. "When we heard this idiot confessing to multiple felonies." The next 20 minutes were a blur of police officers, statements, and evidence collection. Ray's recording was clear enough to hear every word of Eric's threats. Combined with the photographs of his attempted break-in and his history of harassment, it was more than enough for multiple charges. As they led Eric away in handcuffs, he turned back to me one last time. "This isn't over, Forrester." "Yeah, it is," I replied. "You just don't know it yet." Officer Martinez, who'd taken my statement, shook his head as the patrol car drove away. 15 years I've been doing this job, and I still can't believe how stupid criminals can be. Confessing to planned arson and murder in front of witnesses, with a recording device running. "Desperate people make desperate choices," I said. "Well, he'll have plenty of time to think about his choices. Conspiracy, attempted burglary, criminal threats, stalking. He's looking at 10 to 15 years minimum." After the police left, I found myself alone with Pam in the motel parking lot. She looked smaller somehow, diminished by everything that had happened. "Jack, don't," I said. "Just don't. I need to say this. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the cheating. For the lies. For getting involved with Eric. I destroyed everything good in my life for a fantasy that was never real." "You're right. You did. Is there any chance, any possibility that we could try again? I know I don't deserve it, but..." "No, Pam, there isn't." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, I had to ask. The divorce papers will be ready next week. Sign them, and we can both move on with our lives. What about the house, the business? You'll get what the law says you're entitled to. Nothing more, nothing less. That's fair. I started to walk away, then turned back. Pam, for what it's worth, I hope you find what you're looking for. Just find it somewhere else. Ray was waiting by his truck, smoking a cigarette and looking satisfied. So that's it? It's really over? It's over. How do you feel? I thought about it. 3 weeks ago, I'd been a betrayed husband planning a quiet divorce. Tonight, I'd helped put a dangerous criminal behind bars and finally closed the book on a marriage that should have ended years ago. I feel free, I said. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. We drove home in comfortable silence, past the garage where I'd built my life's work, past the house where I'd learned to be happy alone, past the town that had rallied around me when I needed support. Eric Sloan had thought he could come into my world and take whatever he wanted. He'd thought I was just another small-town rube who could be intimidated and manipulated. He'd been wrong about that. He'd been wrong about everything. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday morning in March. Pam got her settlement, exactly what the law required and not a penny more. She moved to Boston the following week, and I haven't heard from her since. Eric Sloan was sentenced to 12 years in state prison. Conspiracy, attempted burglary, criminal threats, and stalking. His lawyer tried to argue that the recording was inadmissible, but the judge wasn't interested in technicalities. Eric had confessed to planning arson and murder in front of witnesses. That was enough. TechFlow Solutions dropped their expansion plans after the scandal broke. Turns out, Eric had been taking kickbacks from developers and inflating property values for personal gain. The FBI investigation is still ongoing. I'm sitting in Murphy's Tavern on a Friday evening, sharing a beer with Ray and watching the town go about its business. Mrs. Dugan stops by our table to show off photos of her new great-grandson. Barb keeps our glasses full and our conversation light. Tommy Brennan, the mailman, tells us about the new family that moved into Eric's old apartment, a young couple with a baby, both of them teachers at the elementary school. Life goes on. The town heals. Justice, in its own small-town way, prevails. Any regrets? Ray asks as we finish our second round. I think about it. 15 years of marriage, gone. A woman I once loved, now a stranger living in another city. A man who tried to destroy my life, now counting days in a prison cell. No, I say finally. No regrets. Not even about Pam? I regret that she made the choices she made. I regret that our marriage ended the way it did. But I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret fighting back. Ray nods. Good, because you did the right thing. All of it. My phone buzzes with a text message. For a second, my heart jumps. Old habits die hard. But it's not Pam. It's not Eric. It's a customer asking about restoring a '69 Camaro SS. I text back, bring it by Monday. We'll take a look. Business is good. Better than it's ever been, actually. Word got around about how I'd handled the situation with Eric and Pam, and somehow that translated into respect, trust, and new customers. People want to do business with someone who stands up for himself, who doesn't get pushed around, who finishes what other people start. I finish my beer and stand up to leave. Ray offers to give me a ride, but I decide to walk. It's a beautiful evening, and my house is only 6 blocks away. As I walk through the quiet streets of the town I've called home for 20 years, I think about how much has changed and how much has stayed the same. The houses look the same. The streets look the same. The people are mostly the same, but I'm different, stronger, more confident, more aware of my own worth. Pam thought she could decide when and with whom she spent her time, and that I'd just accept it. Eric thought he could intimidate me into selling my life's work for pennies on the dollar. They both thought I was weak, stupid, and easily manipulated. They were wrong. I reach my house and stand on the front porch for a moment, looking at the home I built, the life I've reclaimed, the future I've secured. From now on, I decide what happens in my world. I decide who gets to stay and who has to go. I decide what I'm willing to accept and what I'm willing to fight for. And if anyone else wants to test that resolve, they're welcome to try. But they should remember what happened to the last people who underestimated Jack Forrester. They should remember, and they should choose wisely.